everybody. How's your man and them? It is Friday, and we will be talking Bam versus Gallo. Bam versus Gallo. That's what I'm talking about. We talk about how we love the lower weight classes in boxing. And why do we love the lower weight classes in boxing? Because it resembles a sport down there, right? It's the upper weight classes, even the middle weight classes where we hear, yeah, but it's a business. But you don't understand. You don't understand why you can't get this fight because it's a business. It's a business, guys. And you just don't understand. If it don't make dollars, it don't make sense. And we can't feed our kids' legacy. So you're just going to have to deal with the fact that. And last week we talked about how they run you in this circle, right? We talked about how you mentioned some business stuff, right? And then you're a fan. You need to focus on the sport. Just focus on the sport. Leave the business to us because we're the geniuses. We are the geniuses. We are the wizards of smart. We understand everything. And you're over there. You're down there. So stay down there. Just focus on the sport. So it's like, all right, bet. So you focus on the sport. You say, all right, I want 1 versus 2. And they tell you, no, you can't do that because it's a business. I thought we were supposed to focus on the sport. So what are we supposed to focus on? What are we supposed to do as a fan? The good thing about the lower weight classes is it resembles a sport down there. The pay scale makes more sense. It forces fighters into more legacy fights. The fighters aren't privileged as guys in middle and upper weight classes. So they're forced into scenarios in which they have to fight these legacy fights. It's good for the fans. It resembles more of a free market, right? It resembles something that makes sense. It resembles an actual sport. We get more 1 versus 2 matchups. And unfortunately, a lot of the American public, a lot of the American even journalists don't focus on the lower weight classes because these guys are horse jockeys and they're midgets and they're not fighting anybody. And it's simply, they're not fighting anybody because these guys don't know who the opponents are because they don't follow it down there. So as Ring IQ said on the roundtable last night, let them do that. Let them do that. Let us be happy about the lower weight class fights. Let us be happy about when Bam is fighting. It's a beautiful thing. When he does fight and we get a fight that we could be having a baton handoff in this fight. And it could be a legacy fight. It is a legacy fight. It's a pound for pound implications fight. More on all of that in a minute. And let's just be happy about that. Let those dudes be miserable over there. Shout out my guy, Nando Yamas. Salute to Anthony Sanchez. Salute to Iceman. Surge in the building. Mantis, he's going to the fight tomorrow. Good for you, man. Should be happy. You should have a blast out there. Double pubic hair numbers. So you're saying Tank is doing, I would call it wood, double wood, triple wood. That's what we used to call it when albums used to flop in the CD era. So I guess people are calling it double pubic hairs now. Double pubic hair numbers. That's the type of numbers Tank's doing. And we're going to call it out. Like I've been saying for how long? This dude's not a star. He's not a star. They're blatantly lying to you that this dude is a star. He's not a star. We don't have an American star, fellas. It's not there. And they're lying to you about it. They're lying to you. Right in your face. Right in your face. Because they don't think you're intelligent enough to get it. You're just a dumb boxing fan. You're just not intelligent enough to understand the articles that these guys are penning. They're in their rooms and they're just writing away. Are they typing away, right? And they're geniuses. They're just geniuses. And they go to their they go to their award ceremonies and jerk each other off. And it's all a beautiful thing, right? But you're not welcome there. You're not intelligent enough to get what they're writing, and you're not intelligent enough to understand the power brokers and their genius behind marinating these fights, etc. So they can lie to you and tell you whatever they want, though. It's a good news for them. Tank's a star because why? They don't have to show evidence of it just because they say so. It's like, okay. All right. If you want to believe it, go ahead and believe it. They always have the lisp. If they don't give you what you want, close your wallet. There you go. And that's what people are doing. The markets are dictating. The markets are doing what the markets do. I don't believe for 1 second the numbers that they've been telling us back in the Showtime era in particular. I don't believe Bud versus Errol did 650,000. I don't believe that Canelo versus Maul did, or Canelo versus Mel did what they said it did, because it wouldn't make sense with the Canelo versus Munguia numbers we got. I don't believe that Tank versus Ryan did over 1 million buys. And I don't believe some of these fights that Tank did even 200,000 buys. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. And they'll call me all kind of names for saying that, but show me. Show us the evidence. Show us the evidence. Oh, we don't have to. We don't have to. No. You're going to have to show the evidence. My default position from now on is I don't believe you. I don't believe that any of these guys are stars. And the market's starting to dictate, and it's going to push fighters into real fights. That's the good news about Tank versus Frank flopping, is it's going to force Tank into a fight. It's going to force him into a fight. The changing landscape is going to force Tank into a fight. And it helps if his numbers are bad. Benavidez being on an undercard. It's not going to be good for him in negotiations for Canelo, but possibly we could get that fight right. Why? Because the market's starting to push back on Canelo a little bit as well. I thought Canelo versus Munguia was going to do over 1 million buys. It didn't come close to it, if you believe the numbers. So the market's starting to tell these fighters, no, you're going to have to fight some fights. Guys, y'all going to have to fight the demanded fights. The demanded fights if you want our money. And that's the beautiful thing about this. You close your wallet, the whole free market, every purchase is either, yeah, I believe in this product, or no, I'm boycotting this product. That's the free market. And people are boycotting a lot of these products. I'm going to show I'm going to talk about Rick Laser and one of his posts this morning, because I think it makes sense. And we're going to talk about the fights as well. Yeah, get those likes up. Hit us with the likes. The less ball washer media is involved in what. That's right. That's right. And before this, this is the thing. Chicano's starting. And I know what this is. One day on a show, I just brought up. I said, there's at least a conversation to be had. Guy, if you look at Gallo's overall resume, that, okay, Canelo, Gallo, there's at least a conversation to be. I never subscribed that Gallo is better than Canelo. I didn't even say, I'm not over there with D-Style right now. D-Style thinks that if Gallo wins tomorrow night, that Gallo all of a sudden is greater than Canelo, has a greater legacy than Canelo. I'm not there. All I'm saying is I brought it up one day, and this is what happens. Is, bigger content creators do this thing where they'll see a smaller content creator, like maybe myself. Let's say I'm like middle of the road, right? Not small, not big. And they'll do it, and they'll take your ideas, and they'll take things, and I see it all the time. I spot it, I just let them go. But they'll do these things. I noticed it right after I said it, that dudes started to run with, especially the anti-Canelo dudes. That's why I need to be careful about what I say on here when it comes to Canelo, is they'll take what you say and they'll run with it. And they started to run with this, Gallo's better than Canelo, and Gallo's got a better resume than Canelo. And I never subscribed to it. I just want that on record that I never subscribed to that. I'm just saying Gallo has a great resume. Gallo, to me, is a first ballot Hall of Famer. The fact that he leveraged himself into a trilogy and a rivalry, a real rivalry with Chocolatito, much like Golovkin with Canelo, that puts you on. If you can get yourself in the same name with the Chocolatito, with the Canelo, then at that point, you're great. You're great. And Gallo is one of the handful of Mexican fighters, and we've named them, over the past 25 years, say, Marquez, Morales, Barrera, Canelo, and Gallo. And you can put them in whatever order you want, but that's the five. That's the five right there. And Gallo's in that conversation, at least. He's in the conversation. But I'm just saying, if Gallo wins tomorrow night, I'm not going to be over there with D-Style saying, because D-Style, I can tell you what the first thing D-Style's going to do. The first thing D-Style's going to do is say, Gallo's better than Canelo. He's better than Canelo. I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say that. But what a great win it would be. So let's rack this right here. Let's talk about this. Gallo versus Bam. Bam versus Gallo. I love this fight. Why do I love this fight? Because it could be a baton handoff. It's old legend versus younger fighter, right? And it's not exactly the same, but I remember when Marquez fought Juan Diaz. And the narrative going in, I believe Juan Diaz was the favorite. The narrative going in is Juan Diaz is coming into his own. This is the next up and coming fighter. This is the dude. Like, he's got high output, hell of a boxer, all that stuff, right? And the narrative going into that fight is Marquez is starting to wear down, right? Marquez is past it. Marquez is on his way out. So this is going to be sort of a passing of the torch, and Juan Diaz is going to beat Marquez. And what happens? Juan Diaz comes out strong. Great fight. One of my favorite fights to go back and watch. Juan Diaz fought a hell of a fight early, and Marquez weathered it. He weathered it. And then he started, as each round went on, to pick apart Juan Diaz. And this is what's dangerous about these fights is everybody starts to write off the old legend. Everybody starts to write off the old lion. The old lion just sitting there, and he's just sitting there, man. He's chilling. He's just chilling. And he's got his crown, and he's just chilling. And then all of a sudden, a young lion walks up, and it's time. It's time to see if you still belong here. Are we going to usher you off? Put you off the pasture? Or do you still belong here? The young lion challenges the old lion. I love the old lion versus young lion fights. It's one of my favorite narratives of fights. It's one of my favorite types of fights in boxing. Is let's see the young lion in the weight class can do something with the old lion and just push him off. Because although I disagree with it, Gallo Estrada's still the Ring Magazine champion at 115. I don't see how that's possible. I don't agree with that, being that you're 18 plus months off. I think that should be stripped of you at a certain point. You should be having to defend that within a year, I think. But he's still got it. He's got it. It is what it is. He's got it. He's the Ring Magazine champ. He is the guy in the weight class. He's seen as lineal. He's seen as the guy. Some would say Ioka. Some would even say Bam. Going down to 112. He's coming right back to 115 to take what belongs to him. But ultimately, this is the old lion who still has his crown, still has his throne, and the young lion is stepping up and saying, nope, it's my time. It's my time. That's what I love about this fight. What I also love is stylistically. So if you look at the numbers, I think Bam has the highest percentage of power punches landed. He is the most effective power puncher in the sport, I believe, if you go by CompuBox, almost 50%. He's 48.8%, I believe, of power shots landed. Highly efficient power puncher, and he sets it up. And he's not economical like Tank. Like Tank will set it up. He'll set traps, but he's not throwing punches as he's setting the traps. Bam is still using his angles and throwing high enough output as he's setting those traps and landing big shots. And stylistically, if you look at this, Gallo Estrada throws 74 punches per round. It's a high output. So what I'm saying is there are going to be openings. There's going to be windows there for the younger. And I would argue maybe better, higher efficient, more efficient fighter at this point in Bam Rodriguez to take those openings and land some big shots against Gallo Estrada. This is what I'll say, though. There's a clear trend here of Bam Rodriguez putting older fighters at 115 out to pasture and stopping them. He doesn't just beat them. He turns it up, he ratchets it up, and destroys these guys. Look at Carlos Cuadras. Look at Sorang Vise. And you can say what you want about Sorang Vise being what. Look, Sorang Vise was one of the most feared fighters in the sport. Dudes just, they don't understand this because they don't follow these weight classes. But all the things you hear people saying about, say, Benavidez, I don't know, who are some others? Like when they were talking about Matias at 140, that's who Sorang Vise was in these lower weight classes. That was Sorang Vise at, say, 115. Destroying guys. Destroying them. Went on this long, years-long winning streak, just destroying them. And I understand he was a little past it, but it's saying something when you stop that guy. Here's the thing about this fight. Gallo is still more polished stylistically than Sorang Vise and Carlos Cuadras. So it's gonna be a tougher it's just going to be tougher a little. It's going to take a little longer for Bam to figure this one out, I think. I don't think this is going to be the fight where Bam just comes in like he did those two guys and just destroys Gallo. I think we could see halfway through this fight, as we're going into round 7, I think we could see Gallo up on the scorecards. I think we could be at that point where we're like, damn, this older legend, he still got it. He still got it. We could have upset alert right here. And then you might see the betting odds start to shrink, right? I think we could have that type of fight. And then Bam does figure it out. And I think ultimately Bam gets a later round stoppage in this fight. I just think he's going to be too much, man. This is a special fighter. This is a special fighter. Bam, to me, is, other than Bud, the best American fighter in the sport right now. I'll go as far as to say that. There's been high praise of other fighters, and they just haven't reached it yet, right? We talked about how these young American fighters just haven't been living up to expectations. And you just name the names: Ryan, Devin, Tank, Teofimo, who's also fighting on Saturday. I'll touch on that in a minute. Name the names. These guys haven't lived up to expectations of them. They haven't lived up to expectations of them. Bam is the one who has. Bam actually has exceeded expectations up to this point. And they might not talk about it because this dude is a horse jockey and he looks like a Mexican Harry Potter. I don't know. Maybe that's why. Maybe he's not as marketable. Who knows? But that dude, I know he's that dude. He can fight. Other than Bud, I don't rank any other American fighter higher than him on a pound-for-pound list. I don't. I think right now I got Bam 8, 7, something like that. And if he wins this fight, to me, he's number 6. At that point, he's number 6. I got a nice little number 6 spot warmed up for him because, I mean, you got Usyk, you got Bud, you got Inoue, you got Bivol, and you got Canelo. That would be like my top 5, and I got Better B of 6, but Better B is just not active enough, and I think you put Bam above him at that point. And maybe some people will go higher than 6. But to me, at that point, he's in that conversation at that point as one of the premier fighters of this sport. He's there. He's there. So I think the 74 punches per round are going to come into play for Gallo, being that I think it will win him rounds early, being that he's active and he's not a straight up and down fighter. Like, Quadras is more straight up and down. So is Soren Vise. Soren Vise, a physical, tough fighter, great chin, and he's just going to walk you down. I think Gallo is a tougher shell to crack. I think he great combination puncher. He can counter himself. There's going to be a lot of great countering in this fight. This is going to be, if you're just a boxing fan, just a good-natured, sweet fan of the sweet science. When I mean sweet science, I don't mean dudes throwing one punch and then hugging. I don't mean dudes, as soon as it gets inside to inside fighting, they just clinch. I don't mean that. These are real slick fighters. And they can look slicker if they fought with a lower degree of difficulty. They're capable of that. It's another reason I love the lower weight classes is these dudes keep their hands free. You have more naturally guys who are smaller, better batteries, more energy, are throwing more punches. So it's just tougher to navigate that, right? So they're keeping their hands free. It's easier to look slick, right? It's easy to look like a great boxer when you're throwing one punch and clinching. It's a much easier thing to do. But when you fight with that high degree of difficulty that Bam fights with, that Gallo fights with, it's tougher to do. That's why, to me, these guys are slick. And guys will push back on that. Dudes will push back. They're not slick because they get hit. They're keeping their hands free. You barely see any clinching. So in this fight, you're going to get some great inside fighting as well. You're going to get body punch. You're going to get the whole 9, fellas. This is boxing. Tomorrow night, you're going to get great, sweet science from these guys. You're going to get the best of the best. Gallo is a tactician, intelligent fighter, high IQ. High IQ. Great combination puncher, great counter, can lead as well. He can do it all. And Bam's right there with him. But he's younger. And he may even be more special than Gallo. And we'll get a better picture of that tomorrow night. Ultimately, I see Bam wearing him out. And I'm going to tell you how my parlay that I got at plus 126. This is just me. Do what you want. As Dwyer says, he says something like, I'm just a dude on the internet and whatever he says, right? Plus 126. I like Tio by stoppage, Teofimo by stoppage. I like Bam straight up, just Bam money line. And I like Lamont Roach at minus 1,300. And that got me to plus 126. I like that play right there because it's safer than, I'm also going to do a play of Bam by stoppage at plus 165. I just think that's too good a value. I do think that Bam is going to stop Gallo late in this fight. And to me, that's going to be highly impressive to stop Gallo. Even a Gallo who's 18 to 20 months laid off, even a Gallo who's been through a lot of fights, to stop him would be special. And I think Bam's going to put on another great performance tomorrow night, and put the boxing world on notice. But Teofimo stoppage, let's talk about that. He's fighting Steve Claggett. And the thing about Steve Claggett is another guy who's going to be there. And look, Ring IQ was talking about it last night on the round table, and he's right. And he actually changed my mind on this. The more I thought about it, and as I thought about it last night, changed my mind on this. I thought that Teofimo, going into this fight, as I thought about it, that Teofimo would put on another flat performance against Claggett. He wouldn't rise to the occasion, and ugly decision. But the more I think about it, he's right. Teofimo's trend is up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. He's coming off of a down performance. I think Claggett, the more I look at him stylistically, the more I watch film on Claggett, he's made to order for Teofimo at this point. He's a guy who's going to be there to get hit. Teofimo's going to hit him a lot, just like Josh Taylor was there to be hit. And Claggett's nowhere close to Josh Taylor, but that's the type of style that Teofimo likes. If you're a tough guy to hit and all that stuff, but if you have output and you're willing to come to Teofimo, pause, he's going to hit you. He's going to hit you a lot. He's going to hit you hard. And the trend is he's trending to have a good performance here. It's good, bad, good, bad, good, bad. He's the ultimate Jekyll and Hyde. He's the ultimate good, bad. He's that stock that just up, down, up, down, up, down. And the stock is supposed to rise on Saturday night. It's set up for him. There's a disconnect in the market when it comes to Teofimo. And it's Teofimo disconnecting himself from the market. I framed it at points to say, like, I don't think Top Rank has put the fights where they're supposed to, and it shouldn't be any of that. I'm wrong. It's Teofimo disconnecting himself from the market. Teofimo's doing it to himself. It's this growing trend of young American fighters who are privileged, entitled, just feel like they're entitled to everything, and they're not doing anything special. There's nothing special they're doing, and our bar has been set so low for them, and they're meeting that low bar. They're meeting it. And Teofimo is one of those guys who's met that low bar. When you talk about he'll put on a great performance, you're like, oh, this guy's gonna be a star. Look at the Bud Light deal, all this stuff, right? And then terrible performance. And then you see he can't get out of the theater in New York to fill Madison Square Garden, and he should be that type of guy that can fill Madison Square Garden, fill the Barclays Center, and he's not. And it has a lot to do with that up, down. The market just doesn't trust him anymore. And on top of that, he's not a likable dude. I need 100 million. I want to fight in the Sphere. Top Rank's pushing black fighters and not Honduran fighters, whatever he's saying. Right? And there's no Honduran market out there either is another problem. I'm Honduran American. I don't like, and there's not too many of us who follow boxing, right? And the ones who do, like, we're not as tribal, it doesn't seem. Like, I don't care that the dude's Honduran American. Can you fight or not? Can you fight? Are you intriguing? So guess what I'm going to be doing tomorrow night? If Teofimo fights Steve Claggett at the same time as Bam, Teofimo doesn't exist tomorrow night in this household. He doesn't exist. He'll exist Sunday morning. That fight would be what we called back in the day a DVR fight. You just DVR it and watch it in the morning. We'll just DVR it. Showtime and HBO used to counter program, and if a fight was good and the other one wasn't as good, we just DVR the other fight. Watch it late that night or early in the morning. And that's going to be one of those. Teofimo versus Claggett is a DVR fight. And so, yeah, I'll get to it. Look, fellas, even if Sonny Edwards is on the same time as this fight, I'll be watching Sonny Edwards Curio fight because I think that's an upset alert. Curio beat Nonshinga 2 fights ago, and he got knocked out by Nonshinga in the rematch, and that surprised me. The first fight surprised me. The second fight surprised me. But Curio can fight. Sonny Edwards can fight too. But that's the type of fight. I'm just telling you. It's going to go the distance. I'll probably play the distance in that fight as well because neither guy has much power. But that's another one you got to watch. And that's more intriguing to me than Teofimo versus Claggett or Lamont Roach. You know? So that's where I'm at with it. Let me play this right here. Let me present to you 2 different things. And we'll get back to the Bam Rodriguez talk in a minute because he's just an intriguing fighter to me, man. He really is. This is Steve Kim, Mario Lopez talking about this fight coming up on Saturday night between Bam Rodriguez and the legend Gallo Estrada.
Bam! Rodriguez takes on Juan Francisco Estrada, a future Hall of Famer. Ooh. Mario, you know how I always say activity matters? Estrada has not fought since his 3rd fight against Chocolatito in December of 2022. Uh-oh.
I know. Well, look, he's a veteran. He knows what he's doing. But again, you got to stay sharp. Bam has been on a roll, and this is going to be a great fight. I can't wait for that fight. And it's unfortunate that we got to split time with the Teofimo fight. But hopefully they won't overlap and we'll be able to catch them. But it's a good thing about streaming. You can always go back.
One thing about Bam, he's been consistent. He's been steady. He is a sharpened blade. And he's focused. And if you look at what he's done since the time he went on 6 days' notice and said, I'm going to take on Carlos Cuadras because I want to go places in my life, all he's basically faced is tough guys.
Yeah.
Bam! Rodriguez takes on Juan.
That's absolutely right. People forget the 6-day notice, Carlos Cuadras. They forget that. The guy just fights tough fights. Even the fights where people don't really know the names. He's a tough fights. He's sharpened. He's one of the, maybe the only young American fighter who has got it through the mud and has gone through the fire consistently throughout his career. There's no careful cherry picking with this guy. My guy Drew would claim that he's ducking Junto. I don't know. And honestly, if he moved up to 118, I think Junto would be a tough fight for him. I think that's his toughest fight, 118 down. By far. I think anything else 118 down, Bam wins. And I would pick that without even thinking twice. Ioka, doesn't matter. Anybody. I would pick it without even thinking twice. But Bam is a consistent fighter. Consistently in tough fights, consistently showing up. Even in the fights where we're a little down on him after the fight, he's still putting on good performances. They're just not great performances, but he's still putting on good performances. You can't expect to look great every single time out, but this guy is testing himself every time out. And on top of that, a guy who's gotten injuries and come right back. Right? So he's that dude. He is the one young American fighter who has made something out of himself at this point to where we say that's definitely a special fighter. That's definitely a special fighter. So there's that. Teofimo could have created a Honduran boxing community a la Manny Pacquiao, but failed to capitalize and build upon his massive Lomachenko victory. He did. And there were some outside things, right? But it's, once again, it's going to Triller, and you know, you can't really blame him, I guess, for going to Triller and that high amount they paid him for the Cambosos fight, but then it falls apart. He goes to Top Rank. But these fighters, the young American fighters, they become their own obstacles. They just can't keep any momentum going. And Bam seems to be the exception to that rule up until this point. Let me, this is dear friend of the show, Rick Glazer on X. Let me see if y'all can see this good. Yeah, okay. So this is Rick Glazer talking about Tank Davis. And let's just read his tweet real quick. And talking to several boxing executives, blah, blah, blah. Tank is simply not the pay-per-view star that he was made out to be. And this has been my point up to this point, right? Is he's not the star people are making him out to be. Generation to generation is we've had several fighters who can do great live gates adjusted for inflation in multiple spots throughout a country. And Tank's another one of those guys. That doesn't make them a star, a mega star, a superstar. And we've seen guys who could come out and do 200,000 pay-per-views and these low overhead pay-per-views before. That's nothing out of the ordinary, but they want to build him up as the face of boxing. They want to build him up badly as something he simply is not. And the issue that I have with this is there's something there with this guy. There is something there with this guy. He's exciting. He looks high IQ. He's setting traps. He looks like a good boxer. He's highly efficient with power punches. Why are we running this scam? It's meaningless. You don't need to do it. If the dude loses, he loses. And once again, I got to give Ring IQ credit as he's seeing the Abdullah Masons out there, the Shushu Carringtons, and we're seeing these young American fighters that look like they want to actually fight. And they want to fight tough fights. And they also want to excite the audience. And it seems like finally the Mayweather era is losing its grip. This constant infatuation with the O and keeping the O and robbing the bank and robbing the fans. It seems like that grip is loosening. But Tank is part of that. It's Floyd, late stage Floyd, handing Tank the Rolodex and saying, here, it's yours now. We're not going through the fire. Low risk, high reward. We don't make other promoters rich. We don't feed our kids legacy. And that's what Tank was. And it didn't need to be that way. This guy's exciting. Even if he loses, it doesn't matter. The guy's exciting. You don't need to be running this scam. Why are you wasting your time running a scam when you actually have something there with this guy? But they're going to lie about this guy being the face of boxing. They're going to lie about him being this superstar, this mega star, right? And he's the face of boxing. He's the guy. And he's just not. And Rick brings up 9 points. Tank appeals to a small demographic. And part of that, look, fellas, we talk about the American boxing fan on the internet, right? And they just don't support. They just don't support. They don't show up for fights. They're likely streaming illegally. And they're not supporting their fighters. They're just not, because the pay-per-view buys aren't there. Even the numbers they lie about, they're still not great. And Tank's another one of those. His base, fanatical base online does not support him. Now, he has people who show up for his fights, who will pay, who will travel. He has that. But there's another market you need to get to, and Tank is not reaching that market. He only appeals to that demographic of fans that'll show up to his fights, that enjoy Chief Keef coming out and all this stuff, right? And then the fanatical online. But the fanaticals online that we'll see on LDBC, right, and PBC Twitter, they don't support his fights. They're not going to his fights. And the pay-per-view buys are showing that they're not supporting, they're not actually paying for the pay-per-views. Because if they were, it would show up. But he's not reaching a casual audience either. And that's mismanagement, because there's an audience out there who would support anybody who wants to knock somebody's head off, no matter where they come from, no matter what they look like, no matter how many arrests they have. The American sports public wants entertainment, and he's entertaining, and they're still not reaching that market. It's terrible. He has no mouthpiece speaking for Tank to promote him properly. Absolutely. Leonard Ellerby's terrible. Floyd's terrible. We talked about how Floyd would be all up in the videos, right? Like Puffy with Biggie, right? Every time you go and listen to one of Biggie's classics, right? Go listen to Life After Death. Go listen to whatever. Puffy, you hear his voice on every single song. Every song. I wish there was a way to block that out. Do we have to hear this dude's ad-libs on every single Biggie classic? Do we have to hear it? Do we have to see this dude on every single Biggie video? It's Puffy, all up in the videos, all up in the videos. Do we have to hear, for every tank presser, do we have to hear Floyd talk about, I'm the best, 50-0, 50, whatever he is, right? I'm the best. I'm still the face of boxing. I'm the best. I'm the greatest. I'm the GOAT. We don't care. We're here to see Tank. We're here to hear from Tank. And then, of course, Al Heyman's not there because Al Heyman doesn't talk. Al Heyman's a mute. And he doesn't, the American boxing media does not demand that the guy show up and do interviews. Nobody writes articles about it. Besides Thomas Hauser at the beginning, like, why doesn't this guy give interviews? Does anybody find that disturbing? Nobody's there to properly promote him. And he's not properly promoting himself because he's hitting pregnant women as he's riding in his car on a booster seat, possibly drunk, and staring in her eyes and running off and not apologetic about it at all. And then whining about how 3 months house arrest is too much. So he's right. Nobody's there to promote him properly. Too long in between his fights, didn't fight in 13 months. Actually, it was 14, and he's right again. Activity is not there. The activity is not there. Well, he fights twice per year. Before that, well, he needs to fight more. He should fight 3 times per year. For the love of God, this dude's fighting the Frank Martins of the world. He fought Raleigh Romero. At that pace, with that competition, he should be fighting 3 times per year. Needs to fight much bigger names, and he's fighting, and that's what I said. Raleigh Romero? Raleigh Romero. This dude fought Raleigh Romero, fellas, and they tried to pitch Raleigh Romero as a great fighter. They really tried to do that. This guy's dangerous. The dude can't chew gum and walk at the same time. He's literally off the short bus. This dude was hitting a piñata in a parking lot. And people are just looking and like, why is this dude hitting a piñata in the parking lot? Why is he doing it? This dude has a life-size, like he's got a chain of himself. He's got a chain and it's his face on the chain. The dude is literally off the short bus. And they picked this dude off the street and built a rivalry between him and Tank. And then got him a belt at 140. This dude lost, went up a weight class, and fought for a belt. Same thing as Matteo Barrios. It's a Tank Davis theorem. Make these guys look better than they really are before the fight and make them look even better after the fight. These guys won rounds against Tank. They won rounds, so they're great fighters. They lost, but they're great fighters. So Frank Martin goes up the rankings after a loss to Tank Davis. Up. Because he won 3 rounds. This dude is ranked higher than George Kambosos, who has an actual real victory at 135 against Teofimo Lopez. And Frank Martin's ranked higher than him. Why? Because he won 3 rounds against Tank. More meaningful fights. There you go. He needs to fight. He needs to fight people. And I start to see some rays coming through those dark clouds. I think he's going to be forced into fights now, as they see he's becoming too expensive to fight these lower tier fighters and these low overhead pay-per-views. He's stuck at 200,000 pay-per-view buys unless he goes up in competition. That seems to be his ceiling there. And on top of that, the landscape has changed to where PBC actually has to go outside to make fights now. They don't have the budget. They don't have a budget. Showtime's not paying for their fights anymore. And on top of that, Waddle and Reed's not there to pay for their fights anymore. They're in financial trouble. They need to go outside and actually make fights now. So cross-promotional fights are more realistic. And these other guys, and fellas, you're about to find that out. Because yours truly has been telling you for a while now. Nobody has ever been afraid to fight Tank Davis. Nobody. They've all been calling him out. They all want to fight him. They all want to fight him. All of them. And you're about to see that. They call Lomachenko. Lomachenko's like, yeah, no problem. Been wanting to fight this dude for 7 years. Yeah, let's go. They call on Devin Haney. And they might put stipulations on him. He would still fight him. Shakur would fight him with stipulations. Nobody has ever been afraid of Tank Davis. There's not a fighter in the world who you can point to that says that guy ducked Tank Davis. They're not out there. They're not out there. Of course, piracy, but they're paying to watch Canelo, and that's the big one. The fights that do big numbers are the most pirated fights. Canelo can do 1 million pay-per-view buys, and I guarantee you it's still heavily pirated. The ones that are doing low numbers, it was not a piracy bonanza. It was not a piracy bonanza, Tank versus Frank. It just wasn't. Dudes weren't getting viruses on their phones and computer, threatening to get viruses to go watch Tank versus Frank. I can guarantee you that. Not enough media push is put on his fight announcements. And look, this is the thing with that. I would argue that the American media is a wing of this Tank propaganda. So I would sort of disagree with this. They're a wing of this propaganda, this movement. And I think it comes in multiple parts. It's one, you have several media outlets that friendly with Floyd, friendly with Leonard, right? And they just want to get in to fit in. They want the clicks. It could be that too. And they're going to push Tank heavy, right? But then there's the pandering crowd. There's the ones that they don't want to be called racist. They don't want to be called all these things, right? So they're just going to pander. They're going to give in, and they're going to put them top 10 pound for pound. They're going to put them number one lightweight because they're just tired of fighting that battle. So they become this de facto wing of the Tank Davis propaganda machine. So when he says there's not enough media push, I would disagree with that. I think that the media is working overtime for Tank Davis. And the reason that there's not this big buzz behind Tank announcements is you look at the opponent. Why in the hell would there be buzz behind Rolly Romero, Hector Luis Garcia, Mario Barrios? It's like they're plucking these guys off the streets. Isaac Cruz was a cherry pick gone wrong, fellas. Frank Martin was a 30-year-old prospect. Why would there be big buzz behind these announcements? And the media tries. They tried. I saw them try with Frank Martin. It's, can't you boxing fans be happy about anything? We got two top 10 lightweights fighting each other. Yeah, but what about these other guys that he skipped? And even Leonard Ellerby agreed with me. He didn't know he was doing it, but he does this. He agrees with me without even knowing he's doing it. And he agreed the press conference 2 days before the fight and said, you skip steps to get here. You do not belong here. That's what he said. You skip steps to get here. Tank's here. You're down here. You skip steps to get here. That's what we're saying. There were other fighters more worthy of this fight. He skipped steps to get here. And you're wondering why there's no big buzz behind these announcements of Tank Davis, particularly when he announced it right around the same time as Canelo announced his fight. Too many boxing pay-per-view events. The consumer is picking and choosing very carefully. There you go. We've talked about that. It's too many pay-per-views. It's too many. Everything's a pay-per-view. Everything is a pay-per-view. Especially when it comes to PBC. Everything's a pay-per-view. Literally. 3 cards, 7 months, all pay-per-views. There's supposed to be this card in the middle to late August. And fellas, we're almost into July. And they've been talking about this card that's supposed to be mid-August, featuring Caleb Plant, possibly against Boo Boo Andre, possibly against Charlo, headlined by them. And it's supposed to be a non-pay-per-view. Where is it? Where is it? And that leads to the ninth point. Amazon Prime is not using its marketing resources enough. There is no marketing push behind particularly these PBC fighters anymore, because they don't have any money. It's not Amazon Prime's job, apparently, to push these fighters. I have to assume at this point, because these dudes did nothing for Canelo versus Munguia. I think they did like one 20-minute segment. I think they did like one 20-minute segment for Tank and Frank, maybe. Right? Maybe. They don't have any money to push, to market these fighters. So it's now on, and this is the problem I've been saying with the PBC. It's a model that it can't work, because you have the head of the PBC. He's supposed to be acting as the promoter, right? He's the real promoter. Everybody knows this. It's the best kept secret in boxing. Everybody knows that Al Heyman is the promoter, but he doesn't promote anything. So who's the actual promoter? What are we doing here? So there's no real marketing machine behind these fighters other than themselves. PBC cannot create stars. It just can't. It can't do it. It's not set up to create stars. It's set to pluck off stars with their big budget. It's like the Yankees, right? The Yankees have this big budget. They have this war machine. They have this war chest, and they'll watch somebody else build somebody up through the farm system, AAA, single A, double A, AAA. Watch them come up. Watch them hit, maybe 320 with 40-something home runs one year, and they're saying, all right, we're just going to overbid for that player. And they're going to bring him in. And that was the PBC for years. The problem is they don't have the budget anymore. They don't have the war chest anymore. So what do they do? What do? They don't have any marketing resources for these fighters. Tank told you that himself. Don't demonize me for saying this, because Tank agrees with me. Tank said 2 days before the fight, I'm not going to the press conference. I'm going to run instead. They're not promoting me. He agrees. He agrees with me. Once again, Leonard agrees with me. Tank agrees with me. They're not demonized for saying it, though. But it's obvious. They have nobody to market them. The PBC, dude, when the PBC tries to market these fights before the actual fight, and I watch it, and my tweets get more likes. My tweets get more retweets, reposts, than their tweets of promoting the actual fight. Their website doesn't even get updated, fellas. Y'all know that, right? There's no updating of the website. There's no real Twitter push. There's no real Instagram push. There's nobody out there to push these fighters anymore. So what's going to happen? I don't know. But his point number 9 is correct. Amazon Prime's not going to help him. Those are all very good reasons, and cumulatively they add to a very low pay-per-view. But there's all kind of reasons you can throw out. There's more than 9. There's more than 9. And it's the reason he's just not a star. They're going to continue to lie to you. They're going to continue to say he's a star. They're going to continue to say he's the face of boxing. They're gonna continue to push this propaganda, and the frustrating part is not that they're doing it, because of course they're gonna do it. That part's fine. That there's little to no pushback from the American journalist types. There's little to no pushback from the American boxing writers, because they just don't want to be demonized. They don't have thick enough skin, fellas. They don't have thick enough skin, and they have relationships with these people, and that makes it tougher, right? They want credentials for these fights. That makes it tougher because they have to make a living off that. And I empathize with all that stuff, but at a certain point, man, grow some balls. Grow some balls. For the love of God, man, like if you're on a ratings panel and you're scared to death of somebody calling you racist because you're going to rank a fighter too low, grow some balls. Good Lord. Good Lord. What the hell's wrong with y'all? It's boxing at the end of the day. If they're going to take it to that place, that's on them. Let them look in the mirror and deal with that. Let them be miserable. Just be yourself. They're going to call you whatever they want to call you anyway. That's the sad part is now you're not behaving like yourself. Now you've taken gatekeeper away from yourself. Now you've taken high intelligent boxing mind away from yourself, away from your name. And they're still going to call you those names. It's like, do the math. Do the math, bro. Like, they're going to call you those names anyway, so you might as well just say what you want to say. I don't understand. Did you not do that math yet? It's part of the push. It's part of the scam. Part of the scam is you put on this full court press to demonize anybody who's going to go after your fighters and call this scam what it actually is. And you're going to make them pander. You're going to make them bend that knee. And dude, you got to look at yourself in the mirror when you do that stuff. I don't understand. I don't get it. I would just stop doing it before I did stuff like that, I guess. They're active online. They don't buy the fights. They don't buy the fights. They're not real fans. The House of Cards is about to fall. That episode of Dateline going to be lit. So the thing is, we're still at a point in American boxing where, and I've talked about this, you got to look at the market. And PBC agrees with me on this. They're not going to say it, but if you look at Tank's opponents up to Frank Martin, they tell you a story. And if you look at them putting Canelo and Munguia together and have them hit a piñata, it tells a story. It tells a story that you need to go after the Mexican base. They're just doing it the wrong way. They're doing it lazily because they think that Mexican boxing fans are this monolith. They don't understand the Mexican base. They don't get it. They're just trying to shortcut this process. They're lazy. They're lazy. You have to be authentic. You have to fight the fights. They like any style as long as you're entertaining. As long as it's an entertaining style, doesn't matter if you win or lose, you're entertaining and you're authentic, they will warm up to you. You don't even have to be Mexican. It helps, but you don't have to be. Obviously, from, I think, Rick's first point, if you look at the market and you're honest about this, this is where we need to be careful, right? We call names. But there are certain markets in the American boxing market, that whole market, that support and certain ones that don't. And I'll tell you one that walked out the door years ago, so you can't blame and demonize them, which people try to do. It's the white market. They walked out, dude. They're not there. Like, they'll try to blame Bob. Bob's Jewish. Like Eddie Hearn's not American. Like, what white dude can you blame for the ills of boxing? Number one, that actually has power. And number two, the white American market walked out both as consumers and participants. They're gone. Y'all realize that, right? They're out. They're out of here. Caleb Plant is the only top 10 American fighter in any weight class. So you take 17 weight classes, top 10, that's 170 fighters. You have one white American fighter in the sport, in the whole sport, top 10. One. And what they saw was, one, we're tired of being demonized and blamed for everything. And number two, we have options. We have options. If I have a dime and she's complaining about everything and I have to pay for everything she does. I got to pay for her nails. I got to pay for her extensions. I got to pay for everything. And she's constantly complaining. And she's constantly doing things wrong. I'm gonna look around one day and see options out there. She's good looking too. And she's not as miserable, so I'm just going to go over there. They have options, and they took them. They walked out. They walked out. They're out of here. So you can't blame them. They're already gone. They're gone. All right, so you can't demonize them. the Mexican American audience is what runs boxing, is what is keeping it alive. And they know they're intelligent, and they know when they're being lied to about stuff. They understand it. And they know when you're trying to be lazy and shortcut and pander, right? It's called pandering. When you try to pander to them. And they're like, no, but we're not buying this. We're not buying it. We're not buying it. And you ultimately you have to fight the fights to get that base. You have to. So they can act like they can shortcut that process and go around it, and you can't. You can't. There are always exceptions to the rule, and you could throw out Ryan's name, right? Ryan's doing big numbers, possibly. We don't know what Ryan versus Haney did. I don't think it did great numbers. That's just me. I don't think it did. And I don't think he's going to be sustainable. He's crazy. But if he wasn't, that Instagram audience would carry him. The casual fans would be there for him. So he would possibly be an exception to the rule, but he wouldn't get that. There's nothing special about him as a fighter. He's more YouTube-ish, right? He's more Jake Paulish. I tend to agree with Ring IQ. I think that Devin Haney is going to end up being Ryan's only big win. And that was ultimately taken away from him as a no contest now. I don't think he's going to get another big win. I don't think it's going to be sustainable. So ultimately, people don't want to hear this, but you're going to need to fight the fights. You have to fight the fights. And that's why I appreciate fighters who do. Bam Rodriguez is fighting tomorrow night. And when Bam Rodriguez fights, everything stops in his household. The kids, go to bed. Go to bed. Get in bed. Get in bed early. Wifey, you need to understand. I'm a good husband. Try to be a good dad. Try to do everything during the week. But when Bam fights, everything stops. So don't bother me. I'm in the living room. Got on the big screen. Don't come in here with anything. Don't do it. Bam's fighting. And whether he punctures the casual market, it's going to be tough to do as a lower weight class fighter. But just for me as a boxing fan, I'm appreciative of it because this is a real dude. This is a real fighter. Can he puncture the market as 115, 118 pound fighter? I think he'll go up even higher than that eventually. It looks like a Mexican Harry Potter. That might not help. I don't know. Maybe it will. But to me as a boxing fan, I'm just appreciative of what he brings to the sport. In a time where everything seems to be bleak here as far as boxing goes. If you look at, fellas, I don't know if y'all caught the NBA draft, but it was Wednesday night, it was Thursday. And I always watch it because I want to get an idea of where we are. And I think the draft gives us a good idea of where we are. I think you could just watch the NBA draft and it'll give you an idea of where we are in American basketball just by watching the draft. And I'm watching it with my son because my son he is a hoop head. He is a big time NBA fan. And, I don't have the heart to tell him like, this is compared to what I came up watching. This is trash. I don't have the heart to tell him, we'll just let him believe what he wants. I want him to enjoy it. But I'm watching the draft and I'm seeing foreign players, particularly the second round. And you can see through it that there's a clear, something is broken within the American basketball system. It's not only the ratings falling, the ratings are plummeting, particularly when it comes to every other sport, fellas. College football's up, NFL's up. I think even MLB is up. College basketball, March Madness was up. College baseball was up in ratings. NBA is the only one down in America. Globally, bigger than ever. In America, is down, ratings-wise. But if you watch the players, it's clear that the scouts are telling a story, and the scouts and the coaches are saying, we no longer trust the American basketball system, the AAU circuit, the college basketball circuit, and now we more trust the European model of players being professionals and turning professional at 16 years old, etc. But there's clearly something broken that needs to be fixed, and I don't think it's going to be fixed because when I look at the American basketball market, and I see it, my son's 9 years old. We exist in it. We play within it. It's broken. It's broken. We are no longer building great basketball players anymore here. We're just not. We're not. It's all travel ball. You have to travel far, far, far places to get some decent competition when it was all localized back in the day and you built regionally out and they're no longer doing anything. The whole thing is broken and it's all because of money. It's all the adults have ruined it. It's all a big cash grab. And boxing is a lot of the same. Is we've broken the sport due to a lot of greed from American boxing power brokers who have brainwashed people into thinking that this is all business and no sport. All business and no sport. But it is a sport. And the only way we get back our prominence, I understand this, fellas. Like, I understand that it's now a global market and the world has gotten smaller. I get that. So I have people telling me that, like when I talk about the belts, you don't understand. It's more of a global. I get that. And I get that the world is going to catch up, but it caught up fast. Fast. This was just 30 years ago. And that's not that long, fellas, where we ran basketball and it wasn't even close. The gap was ridiculously big and they closed it quick. They closed it quick. If you look at the belt counts just 10, 15, 20 years ago of countries that owned major belts in boxing, they closed that gap quick. So I understand that foreign fighters are getting better. I understand all that. I understand they have more access to sparring. I understand that we have more access to watching them fight and footage, and they're going to be bigger because of that. But that doesn't explain why the Japanese market is the way it is now compared to where it was 10, 20 years ago. They're better. They're better. But it doesn't explain why the American market has gotten worse. It doesn't. You can't just say the rest of them caught up. The rest of them built better pipelines. No. It's both. Both things are true. They've gotten better. We've gotten worse. We have gotten clearly worse. The evidence is everywhere. You can just use your eyes to see it. So that's helped them to close that gap. But I think it has a lot to do with expectations. Our expectations and our demands of American fighters have gotten significantly low after the years. And our expectations of foreign fighters are high. So they're living up to them. And our fighters are living down to our expectations of them. So that's all I got today, fellas. I will be back either Sunday or Monday because I do want to. I'm going to try Sunday because I do want to say things. Because if Bam versus Gallo plays out anywhere close to how I think it's going to play out, I'm going to have a lot of things to say. Whether it's Gallo pulling off the upset, which I don't see, or Bam winning the fight, maybe it ends up being a great classic fight. It could be that too. Or it could be Bam putting on another great performance and showing out. And we have to talk about a truly special fighter at that point who is growing into his own. So y'all have a great weekend. God bless. Peace.